Hello and welcome back to the third episode of the Mama Africa podcast. I'm your host HD, the BSB. Like, share, comment on the YouTube video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and the episodes of the main podcast dropping tomorrow. Of course, and follow us on social media, the link's in the description. And of course, join us for more. You are always welcome. And just like that, we found ourselves in the second round of the Champions League, the African Champions League football, of course, and it was a pretty, let's say, lifeless round. That's what it was. We'll start from Group A, which was the less lively or the most lifeless of all groups. It was the goalless group, as both games ended in 0-0 draws. We start, of course, with a game between Al Hilal Omdurman and Al Ahly, which took place on Friday afternoon. It was a pretty tough time, I think, to watch a game between Al Hilal and Al Ahly. It was played like in afternoon in absolute scorching heat in Sudan, of course, considering the nature of the country. It wasn't a good game by any means necessary. It wasn't a great watch. This was Al Ahly coming from the FIFA Club World Cup, straight from that competition, still pretty exhausted, not really 100% players. There was still coming back as well from the African Cup of Nations for Al Ahly, in particular, of course, returning from that competition. Mohamed Abdelmonem, there was Hamdi Fathi, Amr Sulia, Mohamed Sharif, who were there. So all of those guys were pretty much the returning from the African Cup of Nations, still pretty much with the exhaustion of that competition, going on. But I think it was a game that I think needs to be forgotten for Al Ahly. Against Al Hilal Omdurman, a side that is probably going to be the happier with the point. Al Ahly always start like this in the group stages. Like, it's not a new thing. They always start like this. It's been like that for the last pretty much 3 seasons or so in the African Champions League. They start like this in the group stages, then they gain steam as they go on in the competition, and eventually win it, like the last 2 seasons when they did so. So that's what really, the positive probably for Al Ahly out of this game. But definitely it's a game that was not really watchable. Al Hilal had better chances, particularly in the second half. They had a couple of good chances to score, but again, Al Ahly's defense were pretty solid and denied them any steal really of that game for the Sudanese side. The other Sudanese side, I'm not going to say managed to get a draw out of Mamelodi Sundowns, because I would say, the game was 50-50. The game was pretty tight between the two sides, particularly in the second half. Mamelodi Sundowns, dominated in the first, then Al Merrikh tried to counter back in the second half. They were the better side in the second half, and certainly deserved their draw. From yesterday's game, it definitely proves my point, I would say, about Al Merrikh. Yes, they didn't play the first game, and I said it, I think, in the preview, that they were fresher than their opponents, and definitely that showed in the game, because they had the resilience to attack in the second half and to make some strong movements towards Mamelodi Sundowns' net. The fact is, I still believe in my point about Al Merrikh. I still believe that they will be, but they are the side the closest to join Al Ahly in qualification. If not Mamelodi Sundowns, I think Al Hilal are not that good. They're far from their best. Al Merrikh, I think, are within a good chart of qualifying to the second round. Obviously, the standings, take into consideration that Al Ahly and Al Merrikh still have a game to play. Sundowns with 4 points on top of the group. Al Ahly, Al Merrikh, and Hilal Omdurman all with 1 point. Obviously, a big asterisk here. Al Ahly and Al Merrikh still to play each other. That game, of course, will be played in March. To Group B, of course, and we're going to focus more on the North African derby between ES Setif and Raja Club Athletic. It was Amazulu versus Horoya before that game. Of course, it ended with Amazulu getting a victory in against Horoya. Of course, they're a side that is pretty much familiar with the Confederations Cup. But to be in the first time with the Champions League and get this big victory over Horoya, a side that is not, they're not bad at all. They're not slouches at all, Horoya Conakry. To get that victory at home, of course, it was with the only goal in the 31st minute by Levuyo Momela. That gives them a big boost in momentum. They're now second in that group, of course, behind Raja Casablanca, who went victorious against ES Setif in a frankly A game that was hard to watch until the last 10 minutes. Genuinely, this game was, and I feel bad for those who had to watch it until the last moment. I mean, it was a Friday. I didn't have loads of games to watch, really. The European games were not that big of a billing to get to watch them, but I think this game was pretty, I'm not going to say boring, but these are the North African derbies. They tend to be tactical, they tend to be cagey, they tend to be loads of mathematics, loads of chess moves here and there. Eventually, it was one mistake from Setif, the home side, that led to Raja Casablanca scoring the winner thanks to Mohamed Azrida in the 71st minute. Of course, this means now that Raja Casablanca with 6 points at the top, 2 goals scored, no goals conceded. It's a pretty good start, although in both games they were not that convincing. The first game against Amazulu was a bit better in terms of attacking, but obviously it's the standard of opponents that differ from one game to another. Amazulu second with 3 points, Setif with 3 points. It's not a good home start for the Algerian side. They certainly were looking for better result, but definitely the situation in the league at the moment, they're far from the top of the table. They're 5th or 6th, I think, in Algeria, so that probably translates in that Champions League form. Raja Casablanca, one of the favourites always to win this tournament and win this competition, and they definitely, at least in the last 10 and 20 minutes, they've shown why people should be worried from Raja Casablanca and why they should be taking them very, very seriously when it comes to this competition. Of course, winners twice previously back in the day. For Setif, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, they still have some really, I'm not going to say easy games, but they still have very takeable games in this group. Of course, the next game for Setif, it will be the back and forth against Amazulu, and they will start by going to South Africa, of course, to face them. That's going to be next Saturday, actually. For Setif, of course, it will be also on Saturday. It will be for Raja Casablanca, sorry, it will be Horoya on Saturday night. It will be in Morocco. Now to the most interesting group, in my opinion, obviously in the Champions League, the group where there's both Tunisian sides for some reason, and we start in Botswana as Galaxy held Etoile Sportif de Sahel to a 1-1 draw. Now, again, I said it always, Etoile Sportif de Sahel's performance against Wydad is not a measuring stick. Their situation in the league is not that good. Their performance in general haven't been that good. The season so far has been a big mess for them on almost every level. They elected a new president. There's loads of financial problems. The stadium is not ready yet, hence why they were forced to play their home games in the main stadium of Hamad Agharbi in Rades. But this trip was pretty tough anyways because of all those situations before, and it was made even tougher by the performance that they put, particularly in the second half. They ended the first half leading 1-0, which is a good thing when you think about it, but the second half was pretty wasteful. Dare I say it was pretty bad from Etoile. They left loads of spaces for Galaxy players who, again, I said it in the preview, you never know. Maybe this will be the game for Galaxy Zhuaning that will they pick points. Probably the only opponent, realistically speaking, that Zhuaning Galaxy could pick up points from at home or away. I'm not going to be surprised even if they go to Tunisia again, make the trip again to Tunisia, and defeat Etoile or get a point out of them again. Maybe they will not to qualify, but at least they put a bit of doubt in Etoile Sportif de Sahel that they won't qualify themselves. 2 draws in a row. This one is worse than the first draw, because at least the first draw was, okay, this is a side that played better than us and got a penalty and they missed it and we saved the point somehow, and we'll take that. Obviously, also there's another big talking point for Etoile Sportif de Sahel. A pretty breaking news actually yesterday before the game. It was announced and it came out that Roger Lemaire, the current coach, is no longer able to continue because of health issues, of course. Get well soon. He's one of the greatest coaches that ever graced Tunisian football. Of course, he's the one coach with which Tunisia won the African Cup of Nations back in 2004 under his guidance, and he will always be remembered for that, really, in Tunisian football mostly. Obviously, get well soon, we hope, and we wish him a very speedy and very good recovery. Back to the game. Again, in the second half, I was talking about the fact that Etoile Sportif were wasteful, and there was opportunities even in the first half. There were situations where you feel, oh yeah, Galaxy may have done a little bit better. They would have been probably equalizing, and they would have been, probably having a better result. And imagine this. In a game where Etoile Sportif du Sahel, a side that won the Champions League before, a side that is experienced in Africa, has more African trophies than Esperance, who won 4 Champions Leagues, they get 50-50 possession-wise against a side that was based in 2014 and plays the Champions League for the first time ever. This is quite a fall from grace for Etoile Sportif. In any other timeline, I'm not going to say in the perfect world, but I think in a normal world, in a normal situation, Etoile Sportif du Sahel would have based them 4-0 or 5-0, and they go home very happy. This game was different. I mean, when Juan and Galaxy have 7 shots on you, or have 10 shots on you, or you have 13, and they have 2 shots on target, or you have 3. I mean, this is not it doesn't feel like a tight game, but when you watch it, it feels more like the chances that Galaxy were creating were more dangerous because Etoile Sportif du Sahel were like being left completely stretched and out of possession whenever Galaxy get the ball and start counter-attacking. And obviously, they can throw all the excuses out there, the stadium, the classic African excuses that we hear every time. But Etoile Sportif du Sahel were wasteful. They deserved to get a draw, and they deserved it in a bad way. I mean, they deserved to be losing that victory in the last possible moment by an absolute howler of defensive mistakes, leaving so much space for the cross. Tabang Cecinia, who scored the goal, was left pretty much free of any marking on the far post, and he heads the ball in 1-1, a result that again pretty much deserved in a very bad way for Etoile Sportif du Sahel, and that will put even more pressure on them heading into the rest of the season in the league and in the Champions League. I really doubt that they can qualify. Yes, both them and Belouizdad have 2 points, but it's day and night between them and Belouizdad. It's day and night between them, even I think, and Galaxy. I mean, you don't really trust them. It doesn't seem that you can trust them to qualify or trust them to have great matches anyway. But again, I hope they qualify alongside Esperance de Tunis, and they hope they will get over this pretty quickly. Also, speaking of Esperance de Tunis, they went and made the trip to Algeria to face CR Belouizdad, and frankly, this was a game where I thought, hey, you know what, the draw would be good. I mean, particularly after the first 10 to 15 minutes where Belouizdad started pretty strong. They had a penalty early on, I think given stupidly, I would say, by Ralen Charleni. Then, of course, Belouizdad took the lead in the 15th minute thanks to a penalty. And then Esperance started to be better. They moved a little bit the ball more. And I thought the lineup that Esperance used for this one, the way they were starting, it was pretty interesting. They almost played like a 4-4-2, where you feel, or a 4-2-3-1, where you feel like, Samba Green, the new Moroccan recruit, felt like more of a winger, which is not his position by any means necessary. But Ramadan was playing as a number 10. Again, not necessarily his position or his profile, but obviously the fact that he's a bit more attacking than any of the other midfield options there in Esperance made him sort of appropriate and available for that position. But I think that's not where Esperance were at their best. I think when Suburb Green moved into that proper position of a number 10, Koulibaly was substituted, and Etoile made his way into the game. That was, I think, much better than when Benrahman was the number 10. The second half, I think, was fully Esperance's, and they should have scored a couple of more goals. The equaliser came late. This was a game about set pieces, a penalty from here, a free kick from there, but I think Esperance deserved a little bit more of this game, but they were pretty wasteful. Kingsley Edo in particular was not that great. It wasn't his best outing, but I will only be forgiving for him because it's his second game, really, and he still hasn't gelled that well with the side. He will obviously get a little bit more chemistry with the games going on, obviously in the league now, and the Champions League as well, so it will be pretty interesting to see how things will pan out for him in the rest of the games. I think there's a couple of good points. Suburb Green is still getting a bit more chemistry, he's understanding the players, he's showing his quality, he's taken set pieces really well, which is something that Esperance needs, particularly corners, because Esperance do not score from them that much, and the fact that they scored from a corner is a pretty good sign, because you need them as solutions sometimes to when open play doesn't work and when your normal attacks do not really work. 4 points out of 2 games, it's a good start, although again, I'm still adamant that it should have been more against Wydad, should have at least got another goal. There was a couple of really good opportunities where a little bit of better decision making would have improved the end product much more. The second, of course, the second positive point of this game, I would say, the third positive point I would say, is that the defense is really good. Like, generally, aside from the penalty, I think the defense between Amamo and Mohamed Tugai is really getting some chemistry. Obviously, Badran there is a pretty different animal altogether. If Badran was there, it's going to be pretty different. I think over the course of the next couple of games, I think this defense, or this pairing of defenders, will get a little bit more, chemistry, and they will understand each other, I think, more over the course of the next few games. All these standings with this group: 4 points for Esperance, 2 for Wydad and Etoile, 1 point for Galaxy. To Group D, and it wasn't a good day for the North African sides in that group, because both sides went to Angola and both sides had bad results, let's say. Wydad Casablanca went and played against Atletico Petroleus de Luanda. The game was in, of course, I mean, this is not an excuse anymore, playing, in like afternoon or like in 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. in Africa, because you play there almost every year. This was a bad game for Wydad Casablanca, let's be fair. This was a bad game. The first half in particular, the first half was one-sided. I mean, there was one shot on target in that first half, which was the goal, by the way, for Atletico Petroleus, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Wydad Casablanca was so poor that they only had one shot and 0 on target. The possession was 25% for Wydad Casablanca in the first half. It felt like Atletico Petroleus were absolutely pinning them and smothering them inside their own box in that first half. And despite the fact that we're playing a 4-3-3 that was pretty much attacking-wise as far as the midfield options is concerned, somehow Petroleus de Luanda still pinned them and played very, very high, and obviously scored the goal. Eventually scored the goal. The goal came, a little bit late in the first half, in the 41st minute. In the second half, Wydad were forced to come out of their shell defensively, despite a bad start again for the second half, for the first 10 minutes or so. But, the equaliser almost gave them a bit of momentum in the game, but it was almost immediately crushed when Yano scored the 68th minute equaliser. And the two goals were pretty laughable, I would say. Wydad Casablanca were absolutely stretched, playing behind their backs, playing behind the defenders' backs, behind the centre-half's back. And, Sheikh Kumara in particular had a horrific game, leaving the Atletico Petroleus players always behind his back, getting spaces, getting in behind, and getting almost every time they get one-on-one against Ignauti, it feels like they will score. They were shooting from outside Petroleus de Luanda, they were trying all sorts of solutions, and deservedly were the victorious side in this one. Outstanding, I think, in that performance. They were the better side, and I said that after the game against Zamalek in the last episode, they're really side they should be worried about in this group, and rightfully so. They're now top of the group, 4 points, and Wydad Casablanca now with 3 points. Zamalek, again, another draw, another bad result, I would say, against Sagrada Esperanza. The first half was boring in this one. They definitely, I don't know. They're still in turmoil, I feel, or something. Zamalek, they're not in a good situation at the moment, locally, domestically as well. They're not that good as well. At the moment, their season is pretty horrific by the standards of 5 times African champions. But to go against a side that also making his debut in the Champions League and have a goalless draw there is not a good look, despite the fact that Zamalek were better. Were better than Wydad against Petroleus, and were better than themselves in the first game, and they still missed loads of opportunities like they did in the first game. But when you miss, at the very least, you're not going to be able to score, or at least you're going to get a draw, a goalless draw, which would happen. Esperanza would absolutely take that draw because they were pasted by Wydad in the first game. And Zamalek, I think at the moment, they're in a pretty tough position. The next couple of games for them is going to be against Wydad Casablanca in the Champions League, and they make the trip first to Morocco. So imagine that. I mean, imagine if they lose, for example, against Wydad Casablanca, and of course it's going to be an Angolan, derby between Petro Atletico and Sagrada Esperanza. Sagrada host first, and Atletico Petroleum de Luanda host second. In Group C, it is Esperance versus Etoile de Sahel, back and forth. In Group C, it is, of course, Setif versus Horoya versus Amazulu, back and forth. And in Group A, of course, it will be Al Merrikh versus Al Hilal from Sudan, back and forth, while Ahli face Mamelodi Sundowns, back and forth. That is how round 3 is going to be shaping in that competition. Thank you for watching and listening. I was with HAD of the PSP. Like, share, and comment on the YouTube video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and the main broadcast, of course. Follow us on social media. I was your boy with HAD of the PSP, and until next time, take care and goodbye.
Behind closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.